What's up guys, it's Mantis here, and I want to talk a little bit about something that has been being discussed on Twitter. Many people have been talking about CD Projekt Red and comparing them to Bethesda when it comes to the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 and the launch of Fallout 76, with the majority kind of taking the side that Bethesda hadn't really tried to deceive anybody leading up to the launch of Fallout 76. And before I really get into discussing my opinions about the comparison, I want to state that Cyberpunk 2077 definitely is warranted to have the criticism that it does. It totally makes sense that people are criticizing it so heavily because the hype for it was so strong. And that's not just the consumer's fault. CD Projekt Red did a great job of advertising the game and keeping the hype alive, and a lot of people bought into the hype. Now, in this particular incident where CD Projekt Red starts to skew a bit is when it came time for people to review their game. They wouldn't allow reviewers to use their own footage when it came to reviewing the game on YouTube. They had to use stock footage from CD Projekt Red, and there wasn't any real information going around, especially truthful information going around about the base console versions of this game, with PS4 and Xbox One respectively not having the best, if any, playability, and going as far as PlayStation removing the game from stores. And a lot of people have been contested about this. It's a strange decision for sure, not something I ever thought I'd see happening with such a major release. But if you look at it a little bit more objectively, you could probably see that maybe PlayStation was being bombarded with refund requests or complaints, and instead of just having to deal with a bunch of refunds or having to deal with people being unsatisfied, they just pulled it from the store so that they wouldn't have to deal with that anymore, which is a completely reasonable route to take. It's just unprecedented. We don't usually see that with such big titles. This is actually causing quite the different view of CD Projekt Red that most have, especially coming off of the heels of the Devotion controversy, where CD Projekt's platform, GOG, had said that they were going to be hosting the game Devotion, which is a first-person psychological horror game developed by a Taiwanese game company named Red Candle Games, and it's set in Taiwan in the 1980s. But where the problem starts to show up is there's a little jab at Jinping and a Winnie the Pooh meme in there as well. I mean, they're all the same thing, but because of that, China's been pretty hard on the game and has been pretty much pulling it from every platform. GOG was like, hey, we're still going to host it, but then said that due to gamers complaining that they were going to be removing it from their store and not hosting it. I guess it wouldn't be removed. They just said they weren't going to be hosting it. This rubbed people the wrong way because most people kind of fairly assumed that it wasn't gamers that spoke out against it. It was, the CCP, the Chinese government, saying that they would remove the platform in China, and therefore GOG walking it back because they want that Chinese market. Now, this doesn't suit over well with a lot of people outside of China because it just doesn't feel right. It's like, just host the game. If people don't want to play it, then they don't want to play it. But it's all sticky, and so it hasn't been giving CD Projekt the best overall look lately, and the launch of Cyberpunk and everything else after it hasn't really helped. As many of you probably know, Cyberpunk 2077 launched with a ton of game-breaking bugs, a ton of texture problems, a ton of anything you can think of. This game had a problem with that. One of the things that I enjoyed, I have this on PC, it's something I've enjoyed playing, I really like the story, I like the side quests, I like the way it feels and looks. But I've had minor bugs, minor issues that I've had to reload the game to get them to work and stuff like that, but nothing nearly as bad as what I've seen for base consoles like the PS4 and the Xbox One, where we're looking at frame rates of like 15 to 20, unplayable games for the most part, broken textures all over the place. And that's, I agree, is completely unacceptable. And something that I've noticed is that CD Projekt Red kind of agrees. They agree that it was completely unacceptable. And this is where it gets interesting to me and where my opinion seems to differ from what I've read a bit online. The people are saying that, like, oh, and this is, like Bethesda when they released Fallout 76, at least Bethesda didn't try to deceive people with how the game was and things like that. But that's not how I remember it at all. In fact, I remember Bethesda being quite dishonest and being quite the opposite of transparent, opaque, being quite opaque about the details of Fallout 76 until people figured them out for themselves on October 23rd, 2018, when the first Break It early test application was released on Xbox One, which I was a part of, and I played it. And I remember being like excited to check out this new Fallout, to be excited to actually, play this as soon as it goes live. I was really stoked on it, but I left feeling oddly disappointed, and not just because it was a beta. Like, I even went in knowing this is a beta, this is supposed to be improved on, but something about it didn't feel right. And I'm not going to make this video about my first impressions of 76. I've done plenty of those videos, but I do want to chronicle how Bethesda handled these things, and how I definitely remember Bethesda absolutely deceiving people. But that doesn't make anything that CD Projekt Red has done pre-launch with Cyberpunk 2077 okay. Two wrongs don't make it right. CD Projekt Red should have allowed reviewers to use their own footage when it came to reviewing them before the release date. They should have not released the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game. They're not even playable for the most part, and most people just want a refund on them. It seems like the smart idea would have just been like, hey, you know what, this game isn't going to run there, we shouldn't release it. But instead they tried to pass it off. I don't know, maybe it's for a quick buck. I'm not trying to accuse them of that, but that's certainly what it seems like. But when people say, oh, Bethesda, I want to talk about how Bethesda's 76 launch went versus this, and then talk about how they handled it versus this, because in my opinion, CD Projekt Red has actually done a pretty good job of handling this post-launch. But let's go back to Fallout 76, and with the help of the internet, we can clearly see what was going on leading into the launch and post-launch of Fallout 76. On October 30th, 2018, the first beta sessions for PS4 and PC go live, but during that first PC beta, it had a tendency to uninstall itself entirely. And some other problems came up with people who had a slower internet connection and couldn't download the game in time, but Bethesda, in response to this, would increase the beta time for the next Break It Early test application from 4 hours to 8 hours. And then on November 14th, 2018, Fallout 76 releases on Xbox One, PS4, and PC for $60 US. Most of the problems from the beta still persisted in this launch version of Fallout 76. It launched just as buggy, if not more so, than Cyberpunk 2077, but Bethesda's way of handling it is quite different from the way CD Projekt Red is handling this one. The first game patch would come November 19th, 2018. And this would be 48 gigabytes on consoles, and it was about a week of radio silence from Bethesda before this would happen. And it focused on optimization and fixing glitches with Pricket's Fort ticket dispenser that previously made it impossible to complete the main quest. On Black Friday of 2018, just 9 days after the release of 76, it was discounted to only $40 US, which is a good deal if you didn't already buy the game for $100 for the pre-release Ultimate Edition or whatever the hell, or even more expensive for the Collector's Edition. 2 days later, on November 24th, 2018, players seeking a refund for the game they purchased struggled to actually receive one. Bethesda's terms and conditions outlined a no refund policy for those who had used the software, which is a ridiculous way of handling things. Some players did apparently receive refunds, and Bethesda eventually kind of relented, but there was issues for people who demanded refunds that could no longer uninstall the game because they no longer, quote, owned it. Such a situation only came about because Bethesda only runs Fallout 76 on its own launcher, not on Steam. On November 27th, 2018, news broke of an investigation by a US law firm into deceptive trade practices by Bethesda and for its no refund policy despite the buggy mess the game had launched in. It was a constant shit show when it came to the legal back and forth, and we're not even talking about what happened beforehand with some of the merchandising. We're talking about, Nuka Dark Rum being kind of promoted as this nice, sleek bottle of Nuka Dark Rum, but in fact it was like a plastic shell that just had a normal bottle of rum in it. And that kind of, for me, summed up how 76 was. Look at this sleek, awesome new thing that we're making, but when you get into it, it's just a bland, like empty world. Because before Wastelanders especially, Fallout 76 felt incredibly empty, unreasonably buggy, and just like an entirely huge misstep from Bethesda. On the 28th of November 2018, the Power Armor Edition bonuses are released, and almost immediately customers noticed that their Westech bags that were supposed to be made of canvas were in fact made of low-quality nylon. This caused a huge surge of backlash against them and also fed into the class action lawsuit that was in the works. The next day, Bethesda would offer consumers 500 in-game atoms, which has a value of $5 US, for the bags not being made of the material that they were promised, which they promised a high quality canvas and they were delivered a low quality nylon. So they're like, here's $5 worth of in-game currency because you're part of the $200 pre-order that you made before the game even came out. You know, you were supposed to get these items, $200 you pre-ordered. Here's 500 atoms to spend in our atom shop. As we move to December 4th, 2018, a small patch is released, with the most notable changes being an increase of the stash capacity from 400 pounds to 600 pounds and a small buff to automatic weapons. This patch was controversial because it involved a set of stealth patches from Bethesda. These were changes that were made but not announced, and they generally made the game grindier. Ammo and fusion core production was decreased, fusion cores burned out faster, and legendary enemies spawned less frequently. The backlash was significant because it increased the grind aspects of the game and not the fun aspects. We would also hear that those who submitted evidence of their $200 pre-order by January 31st, 2019 could receive a canvas bag. It was later revealed that they would not receive their bag for 6 months regardless. The next day, a Reddit user on the Fallout 76 subreddit said that they were receiving access to the support forums filled out by players, some demanding refunds, others demanding canvas bags, but Bethesda later notified people that it was a relatively small breach. But the user claimed to have access to 8 pages of credit cards, addresses, and other information in less than 24 hours. And even though this list that has been compiled by a couple of people online seems to kind of go dry after this list actually goes on, and we don't need to have somebody type it all out for us to remember it. Fallout 76, even post Wastelanders, even post Steel Dawn, is broken. It's not unplayable by any means, and there's definitely fun to be had, but I still run into what I would consider game-breaking bugs. One of which being the daily ops not giving me any rewards for beating them in the correct time period. I can beat a daily ops in under 8 minutes and get told, even though I haven't done a daily ops in 2 weeks, that I'm no longer eligible for my rewards because I've already completed that job. There's so many different things like that are still continuing with Fallout 76 2 years after launch, that it's laughable to me that people look at Cyberpunk 2077 a week after launch and try to compare the two. Bethesda has done nothing but abdicate the responsibility to others. They've done nothing in the form of taking responsibility when it comes to the game launching badly. They treat it like a meme when they're talking about it in public, and it's silly. It's silly to compare the two when CD Projekt Red themselves has come out and been like, hey, our people are still going to be getting their bonuses regardless of review scores because our mismanagement led to the game releasing buggy. We should have done this. We should have not allowed the review process to be handled so poorly. We should have managed the game better. We should have done... They've taken responsibility completely. Does it make what they did okay? No, because they did it with some kind of forefront knowledge of like, oh, we're trying to hide this, we're trying to hide these console versions of the game, and that's never cool. It's never cool to mislead your customers, and I'm not giving them a pass for that. But to act like the Bethesda situation with 76 is anywhere close to the way this is launched is asinine. I've been a fan of Bethesda's since the launch of Fallout 3, and one thing I've noticed since joining the fan base is the constant decline of not only customer service, but quality that Bethesda has had. They've watered down Fallout to the point where 76 is like this mix-matched, like weird campy version of what Fallout used to be, and their latest single-player version of Fallout, the story is so like empty, and it's insane the amount of watering down Bethesda has done as a company, but also in their products. Now, it doesn't make me worried for their current product. It doesn't make me, I don't hate any company like that. I don't have hate for Bethesda, but I'm also not going to blindly be like, oh, this is okay, and this is okay, and this is okay, when it's not. And when people try to take the piss out of CD Projekt Red by comparing them to Bethesda and saying, well, at least Bethesda didn't try to deceive their customer base, they absolutely did. They did it with their shoddy merchandise that they were trying to shill out to everybody. They did it by sending hand-chosen influencers to the Greenbrier event and influencing them to say positive things about the game in exchange for gifts and little thank yous from Bethesda publicly. These type of they influence things. When Bethesda sets up a stream of highly viewed Bethesda YouTubers and things like that, and all of those YouTubers went to the Greenbrier event and all of them had special fancy merchandise from Fallout 76, you can't expect them not to say positive things when they are asked to, and it's silly for people to not see that. It's silly for people to not see that there's absolutely people that I wouldn't say got paid directly, but were definitely sugar-coated into speaking positively about this game, and now all of a sudden, oh no, Bethesda didn't try to deceive anybody. They tried to buy off influencers. They did buy off influencers. They had shoddy merchandise that they lied about consistently to the point where there was lawsuits about it. They they had a whole beta going on for months and still didn't fix anything by the time it launched, and 2 years later we're still coming into giant bugs. Now, if you show me Cyberpunk 2077 in the year 2022 and it is a buggy mess and it still looks like, you know, the textures don't load in properly and there's a bunch of game breaking bugs or something like that, then hey, by all means, there you go. CD Projekt Red didn't do what they were supposed to do. But I would almost put my entire bank account in money on a bet that Cyberpunk will have a lot of these bugs ironed out within the next 6 months. This isn't a video to defend CD Projekt Red. I think a lot of what they did leading up to the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 has been pretty scummy. But I think the way that they're handling it is not scummy. Maybe it's just to save face, I don't know, but either way, they are making, in my opinion, the right moves by taking responsibility and saying that they're going to address it and make it their #1 priority to fix what's going on with the game. When you look at Bethesda's turn on that, they didn't really do that. It was a lot of radio silence and underhanded patches that ended up just making the game more grindy and kind of creating more problems than it had before. Cyberpunk 2077 is pretty much the first CD Projekt Red game that I've played. Other than that, the only thing that I really liked from them was GOG. I'm a big fan of that platform. But I didn't really play The Witcher or anything like that. I didn't have predisposed fandom. In fact, my fandom lies more with Bethesda, and I'm still here to say CD Projekt Red is handling this 100% better than Bethesda handled the launch of Fallout 76. So my biggest point of this entire video is people who are comparing that to try to remember what really happened during the launch of Fallout 76, because Bethesda was not squeaky clean. They were hiding things, they were deceiving their customer base, and it was all pretty scummy. But that's about all I have to rant about today. I want to thank you for listening to me go on and on about this. Thank you for stopping by the video. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank my patrons and YouTube channel members, but a big special thanks to my biggest supporters: Zeroster, JP Rivera, Fireflare, Ruben Atwood, Legendary Angel 94, Irk the Irk, Phil Starsick, Hatched Bread Gaming, Alexander Cobb, Papa Swanson, Billy Joe Jimbob, Bill Scott Sheets, Edgy, and Primark Mustard. Thanks again for all your support. I couldn't do it without you. I'll catch you on the next one. It has been Mantis.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die.